All right, Nick, let's talk about the Oklahoma Sooners. Specifically, let's talk about the Sooners defense. But before we can go and talk about this year's defense, we got to talk about last year's defense. This was a defense that sucked really bad. It was 122 out of 131 total defenses in the FBS. This defense flat out just under expectation. Brent Venables, defensive guru, defensive mastermind, disappointing on the defensive side of the ball last year. Now, this year, on the other hand, they've already jumped up almost a staggering 70 positions. They're number 52 in the nation overall defense, and they're getting better every week. And I think there's one thing in particular that has really helped this defense turn around. Obviously, the addition of some key playmakers around the ball, but a new mentality and a new way of thinking. They've gotten themselves in a good mindset, and I think that is what has pushed this defense over the edge. I have a very interesting article. Let's read from it, and then we'll talk about it on the other side. This, of course, is over from on Sooners Illustrated, a Fan Nation site. It says, through the Sooners' first 7 games, opponents have run 18 offensive snaps in goal-to-go situations against OU's defense. Oklahoma has surrendered just 7 total yards on those 18 plays, and the only 2 touchdowns allowed came immediately after a defensive penalty that gave the opponent a fresh set of downs. Honestly, it's just a mentality when they're down there. Cheetah linebacker Deshaun McCullough said, "This is what we do. We're all tough, physical. This is the time to show up. There is no special play call. There is no what we must go in this formation. It's just to play hard and be more physical than the guy in front of you." Brent Venables goes on to say that it creates belief, he said, of those goal line opportunities. And this mental fortitude has become one of the defining characteristics of an Oklahoma defense whose much improved play has helped place this program in the college football playoff discussion this season, which a lot of people forget. Oklahoma's undefeated, really great offense. They had a great offense last year, really good defense this year. I think it is much, much better than it was last year. And we all know defense wins championships. So now is the best time to start getting better on defense. But Nick, what do you think? I want to know what you think about this Oklahoma defense. Mainly, what is this new mantra, this new mentality for them doing for them? And just your general thoughts of the growth of this program. Before we go to that, though, Oklahoma, big game against Kansas. Kansas has been feisty. He's played teams very tough this year, so you can't sleepwalk through this one. Got to show up. I'm excited to know, what are your thoughts on the score of the Oklahoma versus Kansas game at Kansas, rather. So let us know in the comments section below. What do you think of the score of the Oklahoma-Kansas game in the comments section below? But Nick, let us know, what are your thoughts on the Oklahoma defense?
Yeah, so right now, a lot of defensive coaches, they've kind of fallen into this trap. And we saw a little bit from last year from Venables, where they're always trying to check and counter their scheme to match the offense. And it's in the news a lot recently, right? How offenses operate. They go up to the line of scrimmage, right? They look at the defense. They look back at the offensive coordinator. He gives a signal, right? Then the offense reacts. They change their scheme, maybe change the formation. The defense then maybe changes something up, and then maybe the offense changes something up. And the thing is about playing defense is that's not the way you want to do it. The best defensive mind in this football generation over the past 30 years is Bill Belichick. He is famous for making very simple defensive game plans. He keeps things so incredibly simple. We're just like, hey, we're just going to double team that guy. Everybody else play. Right. It's very, very simple kind of concepts because he wants his defense playing fast. And that's what we're seeing from Oklahoma this season. I think they're keeping it very bread and butter, very vanilla, because they're like, look, we know the way college football is these days with the offensive coordinators. They're going to come up to the line of scrimmage and try and check to a good play every single time. The reality is, though, on defense, especially in the red zone, if you play fast, if you play aggressive, you're going to stop them a lot of the time. And that's what we're starting to see. I think a lot of defenses get in the trap of like, okay, how do we counteract this formation? Or how do we check to a different zone coverage when the quarterback changes a play? Or, oh, the quarterback called an audible that swaps safeties or something like that. And it just creates a lot of chaos and actually hands the offense big plays that otherwise wouldn't be there. What we're seeing from Oklahoma is a lot more, hey, let's line up with our athletes. Let's give them the assignments and tell them to make plays. And I think that is the key part of this turnaround here. And I think a lot of it has to do with the coaching, right? And I think a lot of it is Venables. Give him credit here for recognizing his strategy and scheme, albeit with lesser talent than he would have liked, last year for Oklahoma's defense wasn't getting it done. He was a little too cute at times, trying to outsmart himself in a number of situations. He simplified it. He's come up with solid game plans and otherwise let his guys go play football, and the results have been outstanding. I think that's sort of the underrated part of Oklahoma because people love the Dylan Gabriel-led offense, of course, pulling out that big win against Texas. But it was the red zone stops, right? And we talked about it before the Oklahoma-Texas game. Whoever wins in the red zone is going to win that game. And the Oklahoma defense, when it mattered most, forced a lot of Texas field goals that kept them in the game, allowed Oklahoma to score late. And that's when you want your guys playing fast the most. The field gets smaller, it gets narrower, margin for error for the offense gets a little harder, gets more constricted. If you guys play fast on defense, force some turnovers, force a few incomplete passes, quarterback gets uncomfortable, you can get off the field and force kicks. That's what we've been seeing from the Oklahoma defense, and I think it's going to continue. This kind of defensive play isn't something that will go week to week. It's consistent, and I think that's why I kind of agree with you. Sooners are kind of like a sneaky good playoff contender right now because the way they're playing stylistically, it'll work in September, October, November, December, and maybe the first week of January in a 14 playoff.
Yeah, Nick, and I think, like you said, that the simplicity, that is the key here because it builds something else that's very important, and that is confidence. You
Yeah.
keep it simple, you get good results, and like they said, Oklahoma, they've been doing great in that goal line or defense against offenses. They've been getting stops, and the more stops they get, the more confident when they get on the field. Hey, doesn't matter who's going to line up in front of us. We're just going to keep it simple. We're going to play defense. We're going to get the stop. So, Nick, I look at the rest of the schedule: Kansas, Oklahoma State, West Virginia, BYU, TCU. All things considered, everyone stays healthy. This is a very winnable schedule for Oklahoma. I could see them going undefeated for the rest of the season, and I don't see any reason why, if they don't win the Big 12 championship game, why this team doesn't get into the college football playoff because they have a pretty impressive resume. They have a signature win. I think this team is doing really good, and I love the defensive play so far because I think that would be the one thing I would have said last year if they were ever even get a chance to get there is they don't have the defense to compete. But this year, that might not be the case.
Yeah, and I think one thing I don't really want to hit on, I remember it from my playing days in college, looking at guys and defenses, how they were really good defenses that we had some years. I played offensive line, and the best defenses we ever had were when defensive coaches kept things so simple. They were always like, listen, line up in the right spot, play fast, run to the football. That's it. And that trust, it sounds so simple, but the reality is that's 99% of defensive football. If you line up in the right spot and do your assignment and don't hand the offense an easy big play and then just make tackles in space and run to the football and play fast, you'll win a lot of games with your defense, right? And look, it's easier said than done, because there are a lot of things going on. Games, of course, organized chaos. You got to keep track of your assignment, where you're lining up and all that. But the best way to mitigate those concerns is just to keep it simple. That's what Venables is doing, and we've been seeing it through Oklahoma so far this season. I think it'll continue. And look, if they run the table and go undefeated into Texas, and even if they lose, I'm assuming they'll play Texas. We'll see how it shakes out. Even if they lose in the Big 12 title game, whoever they play, 12-1, I think you got to give Oklahoma a chance to get in the playoff. I mean, I think right now, if you're a Sooners fan, a lot of football left, you got to feel really good about where this program's at.